So what are the proposals? First one, if any matter or any radiation is interacted with matter, that matter behaves like it is made up of particles called photons. In interaction of radiation with matter, the matter behaves like it is made up of particles called photons. It is made up of particles called photons. What is the second one? These photons have the energy, and this energy is similar to the E is equal to h nu. The energy of the photon E is equal to h nu. What is the momentum of the photon? Because of the momentum of the radiation only, the concept of photon was assumed. So what is the momentum? Momentum of the photon P is equal to h nu by c. So we will discuss what is the relationship between this E and P in the next session. So what is the fourth point? This is very, very important point. Each photon has definite frequency, definite energy, definite momentum, and definite wavelength. When an incident radiation is increased, there is a possibility for the number of photons crossing per unit surface area. But all photons should have same energy. There is no change in the energy of the photons. It will be a change in number of photons crossing per unit area when intensity of incident radiation was increased. So when intensity of incident radiation increases by any other factor, then the number of photons crossing per unit area increases. Means the number of photons emitted are increases, but all photons have same energy. Means there is no change in the energy. Yes, but all photons have same energy. So from this prediction, we can say that energy of the radiation is independent of incident radiation or intensity of the incident radiation. That is very, very important point. Two more points are there for the photons. The fifth one is photons are electrically neutral. Means there is no deflection of photons when it is placed in electric field or magnetic field. So they won't respond for electric field or magnetic fields. The last one, conservation of photons. Suppose if a particle photon collision is there, in that collision the total energy and momentum will be conserved. But there is a possibility for the non-conservation of photons, because in that collision photons number may loss. But conservation means loss should be replaced by the gain. But here gain is not possible. So we can say that if any photon lost in any particle photon collision, that loss is replaced by a newly created photon. That is very, very important. So in a particle photon collision, the total energy and momentum are conserved. That is very, very important. But the loss of photon in this collision replaced by a newly created photon. The loss of photon is replaced by a newly created photon, because there is a chance for the loss of photons in the collision. So photons number is not conserved, but whenever it is replaced by the newly created photon, it is conserved. These are all the major properties of the photon in this photoelectric effect. So here is one problem which relates to the work function and wavelength to the stopping potential. The statement of the problem is like this: the work function of a cesium is 2.14 electron volts. Find the threshold frequency for cesium and wavelength of incident light if the photocurrent is brought to 0 by a stopping potential of 0.60 volts. So we should write what are the physical quantities are present in the problem. First of all, work function phi naught, how much? 2.14 electron volts. So we should find out the threshold frequency, next wavelength. So there is a relationship between the threshold frequency to the work function. So what is the threshold frequency equation? Nu naught is equal to phi naught by h. Therefore, threshold frequency nu naught is equal to phi naught by h. This is the first bit. So what is phi naught work function? 2.14 eV by h is Planck's constant, 6.625 into 10 to the power of minus 34 joule seconds. Because E is equal to h nu, h is equal to E by nu, nothing but E into time. Therefore, nu naught is equal to 2.14. 1 eV is equal to 1.6 into 10 to the power of minus 19 joules. By 6.625 into 10 to the power of minus 34 joule second. Joule get cancelled. It is 34 actually. So 2.14 into 1.6 10 to the power of minus 19 by 6.65 into 10 to the power of minus 34. If we did the calculation, concludingly we will get 5.16 into 10 to the power of 14 hertz. This is the threshold frequency for cesium. So this is the calculation. Next we should find out wavelength of incident light if the photocurrent is brought to 0. If photocurrent is brought to 0, the energy will be equal to EV naught because stopping potential is there. So if photocurrent is 0, is brought to 0, energy is equal to the EV naught, and we will apply the lambda is equal to EV naught plus phi naught equation. So the solution of the BBT is like this. If photocurrent is reduces to 0, then maximum kinetic energy is equal to EV naught. So we know that Ke is equal to h nu minus phi naught. Therefore, we can write EV naught is equal to h nu minus phi naught. Nu we can write C by lambda minus phi naught is equal to EV naught. So from this, what we can write, EV naught plus phi naught is equal to hc by lambda. Therefore, lambda is equal to hc by EV naught plus phi naught. Now, we are going to find out the lambda value by substituting all the values which is in the formula. H 6.625 into 10 to the power of minus 34 joule second into C, speed of light, 3 into 10 to the power of 8 meters second inverse by E, electron volt, or the, what is this E? Charge of electron, 1.6 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulomb into V naught is the stopping potential. How much is the stopping potential? 0.60 volts plus, so what is the work function of the cesium? 2.14 eV. So 2.14 into 1.69 10 to the power of minus 19 joules. So we can take the 1.6 and 10 to the power of minus 19 is common here. So 2.14 plus 0.60, and there also we can do the 8 minus 34 calculations. So after doing all the calculations, you will get 454 nanometers, which is in the equal to the indigo range. So this is the wavelength of the incident light for the given values. Here is one more problem, so which relates the frequency of the incident radiation to the power emitted. So the problem statement is a monochromatic light of frequency 6 into 10 to the power of 14 Hz is produced by a laser. The power emitted is 2 into 10 to the power of minus 3 watts. So what is the energy of a photon in the light beam? E. And how many photons per second on an average are emitted by the source? So what are the given values? First of all, frequency nu is equal to 6.0 into 10 to the power of 14 Hz. Power emitted is 2.0 into 10 to the power of minus 3 watts. They are asking what is the energy, and they are asking how many number of electrons or protons, sorry, how many number of photons are emitted by the source and in a given time. So how to solve it? So listen, then if this is the case, what is the first one? Energy. E is equal to h nu, simple. H is Planck's constant, 6.625 into 10 to the power of minus 34. What is the frequency of the source? 6 into 10 to the power of 14 Hz. 14. So the energy is approximately equal to 3.98 into 10 to the power of minus 19 joules. First bit was over. Energy was over. What is the second bit? How many photons per second on an average are emitted by the source? See here, the power emitted is this much, with energy this much. So the total number of photons emitted, N, is equal to, we can write P by E. Why? The total power is equal to, total power emitted is equal to number of photons emitted into energy of each photon. So we can write P is equal to NE, where N is equal to number of photons, where E is equal to energy, P is equal to power. Now we should find out number of photons emitted per second. Therefore, N is equal to P by E. So what is the power here? 2 into 10 to the power of minus 3 watts. What is the energy of each photon? 3.98 into 10 to the power of minus 19 joules. So concludingly we will get 5 into 10 to the power of 15 photons per second. This is very, very important. If we do the calculation, we will get the same thing. So 5 into 10 to the power of 15 photons per. Now we are going to see the wave nature of matter. See, the radiation or matter have dual nature. These are the conclusions we are seeing here. So the wave nature means, suppose if you want to know about the dual nature, first is particle nature, second is wave nature. Go back to the light. What is the form of energy? Light has particle nature and wave nature. There is a big fight between the scientific groups. But the particle nature of light was proved by reflection and refraction. The wave nature of the light was proved by diffraction, scattering, interference, and many more, polarization and many more. So light is behaving differently, such like that radiation, light is also a radiation, is electromagnetic wave. So any wave or any radiation behaves both, means it behaves like a particle as well as wave. Mr. A.H. Compton, by his Compton scattering experiment, he proved that there is a particle called photon. Because of that only the radiation has momentum. That is one of the prediction. And many other scientists came, that is particle, which is this is a wave nature like that. But one scientist came, his name is de Broglie. So he proposed a hypothesis, a bold statement, that the matter or the radiation has both particle and wave nature. Why? He has derived one equation, lambda is equal to h by p. Lambda is wavelength. P means momentum. Wavelength, which is an associated property of wave. Property of wave. Momentum, which is an associated property of a particle. So, what we can conclude from this explanation, if you want to find out the properties of a wave, you should depend upon the properties of a particle. So both are related to each other. That's why, because of this attribution and contribution in an equation, we can say that radiation has a dual nature. This is the conclusion in a best way. So what we can understand, lambda is equal to h by mv. So or h by p. So we are going to see the equation for the momentum and how much wavelength can be produced by the given equations. So lambda is equal to h by p, where lambda is called de Broglie wavelength. So what is the equation of P? We know that energy is equal to h nu, nothing but h c by lambda. Such like that c is equal to nu lambda, therefore lambda is equal to c by nu. Now I am substituting this lambda value in this equation. Let us say this is equation 1, this is equation 1, 2. So substitute equation 2 in 1. So what is lambda value? C by nu. C by nu is equal to h by p. Therefore, cross multiply, we will get p is equal to h nu by c. So lambda is equal to h by p is the equation of wavelength, and p is equal to h nu by c is the equation for the momentum. This is de Broglie's momentum, or momentum of the radiation. Now, this concept is valid for microscopic or macroscopic objects. We will see one example, then we can. Now, we will take an object of mass 0.12 kg. It is moving with a velocity of 20 meters per second. We will try to find out its momentum and energy. Momentum P is equal to mv, where m is equal to 0.12, where v is equal to 20, 0.12 kg, 20 meters per second. So finally we will get 2.4 kg meters per second. This is the momentum value. So what is the wavelength? Lambda is equal to h by p. What is the h value? 6.625 into 10 to the power of minus 34 joules second. Momentum is equal to 2.4 kg meters per second. If you do the calculation, we will get the answer in terms of 2.76 into 10 to the power of minus 34 meters. Means wavelength for this much mass of a body moving with this velocity is in the order of 10 to the power of minus 34. 10 to the power of minus 34 is very less than our limit, beyond our limit it is. Means it is very difficult to find or observe this smallest wavelength. So, if a body of size macroscopic, means bigger size objects, they won't exhibit this wave-like nature because of the smallest wavelength. This is very, very important. So, this is not valid for macroscopic objects. Macroscopic objects won't exhibit wave-like properties. This is very, very important. So, it is useful for microscopic or not, and what are the limitations in the microscopic also we will see. So, now consider an electron. Of mass m, which is traveling through a potential of V. Now, what is the energy acquired by this electron? We can write K is equal to EV. But if it is traveling through a potential V, the energy acquired is kinetic energy. The original kinetic energy equation is half mv square. The amount of work done to travel through a potential is equal to EV. The minimum kinetic energy is half mv square. So, we are equating half mv square is equal to EV. So, in this case, we are going to see the expression for the P. So, we can write half mv square is equal to P square by 2m. Because P is equal to mv whole square by 2m, m square and m get cancelled, we will get half mv square. So, P square by 2m is equal to EV. P square is equal to cross multiply 2m EV. P is equal to under root 2m EV. Or you can, in place of E, you can write Q also, no problem. So, wavelength or de Broglie's wavelength, lambda is equal to h by p. Therefore, lambda is equal to h by under root 2m eV. H is Planck's constant, m is mass of electron, E is charge of electron, V is the potential where the electron is passing. If you substituted the whole the constants in this equation, you will get lambda is equal to 1.227 by root V. So we got the lambda is equal to 1.227 by under root V nanometers. Suppose if potential is equal to 120 volts, if you substitute the values, you will get lambda is equal to 0.112 nanometers. This value is equal to the space between the plane crystals in atomic structure. This this value is equal to space between the planes of a crystal. So, what we can understand from this hypothesis? So, if you want to study the internal structure of a crystal, we should use the wavelength of this much, then we can understand the internal structure of any crystal. So, which electromagnetic wave has this much wavelength? X-ray. So, X-rays are useful to investigate the internal structure of the crystal. So, this application proved this one. For this discovery, Mr. de Broglie got the Nobel Prize. So, the X-rays are useful to investigate the internal structure of any crystal. So this one concept leads to the another discovery. Now we will see the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So what is this uncertainty principle? Previously we have discussed that for macroscopic objects the wavelength is very least, so beyond our limits. So it is very less than our limits. So is it possible to find the wavelength of microscopic objects? Is it possible? See, suppose if this is the atomic structure, it contains some n number of electrons around the orbits. Suppose if you want to see these electrons, you should apply energy. Once the energy which is radiated to the electrons, they absorbs the energy. Whenever any electron absorbs the energy, it won't sit calm. It will roam around within the given lattice with enormous speed. So it gets momentum. When it is under the momentum, it is very difficult to find out its exact position, because they received an enormous amount of energy. Very difficult. That means at the given time or at the same time, it is very difficult to predict the position and momentum of the given electron. This is said to be Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So it is very difficult or impossible to predict the exact position and momentum simultaneously. At same time. So if you want to find the position, momentum dominates. If you want to find the momentum, position dominates. So there is an uncertainty to predict all these two things correctly at the same time. So the uncertainty in position is delta x. In position or in finding the position is delta x, or you can write in finding the. Same like the uncertainty in finding momentum is equal to delta P. So what is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? The product of uncertainties in momentum and position is greater than or equal to h cross, where h cross is equal to h by 2 pi. So this is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Why it is happening as uncertainty? Electron is not localized. It is revolving or distributing over a space, a given space. When it is localized, what is the plot? When it is distributed, what is the plot? We are going to see the plots. So, if delta x into delta p is greater than or equal to h cross, if delta x should be 0, that means delta p tends to infinity. So change in momentum, or the momentum is infinite, prediction of position is 0. Vice versa also possible. If delta p is 0, automatically delta x tends to infinity. This is very, very important. So where the momentum is infinity, very difficult to find the position. If position is infinity, very difficult to find the momentum. So how the graphs will be? So for this case, the graph will be like this. Only the central maximum you can appear. Momentum is very difficult, means space is very less. So you cannot predict the momentum. So but when position tends to infinity, very difficult to find the momentum. So like this. So from here to here it is lambda. So this is the graph. We can understand where the position tends to infinity, momentum is 0. Where momentum tends to infinity, position is 0. Yes, this is a problem which relates to the de Broglie wavelength. So what is the de Broglie wavelength associated with an electron accelerated through a potential difference of 100 volts? What is the de Broglie wavelength formula? 1.227 by under root potential nanometer. So where V is 100 volts, potential difference is 100 volts. So lambda is equal to 1.227 by under root 100 nanometers. Therefore 1.227 by 10 nanometers. It is approximately equal to 0.1227 nanometers. Therefore, lambda is in the order of 0.123 nanometers. This 0.123 nanometers is the range of X-ray. This is equal to the wavelength of X-rays. Here, this is an experimental setup. It is called as Davison and Germer experiment. They did one experiment to find the relationship between the photocurrent to the intensity of incident radiation. So let me clarify what are the different parts, what is the use of this part. So this is the high potential, and this high potential is connected to the load resistance to this collimated chamber, and this is electron gun. This electron gun contains, F means filament, it contains a filament, a tungsten filament which is coated with barium oxide. Coated with barium oxide. So whenever this electron gun operated at low voltage or low battery, low potential is enough, it releases the electrons, and these electrons are traveled through a small nozzle, and it becomes a collimated beam, and this collimated beam is passes through the chambers and reaches to the nickel target, nickel one of the metal. Whenever it reaches to the nickel target, the many electrons which are in this collimated beam are diffracted. Wherever they diffracted, these diffracted electron beams are collected by the movable collector, means the collector which moves to the different directions, because if voltage varies from 44 volts to 68 volts, means these two scientists did the experiment from 44 to 68, then the angle of diffraction is different. So with respect to the potential applied, there is a change in the angle of diffraction. That's why this collector moves from maximum peak to maximum peak, maximum up to maximum down. So it collects the number of diffracted electrons in a form of beam, and this movable collector is connected to the galvanometer. What is the use of this galvanometer? This galvanometer collects the number of diffracted electron beams which sends the photocurrent. So with respect to the potential applied, and there is a possibility for the change in the amount of photocurrent. So 44 volts to 68 volts, they did the experiment and they appeared the maximum peak at 50 degrees. This whole setup is coated with a vacuum chamber. What is the meaning of vacuum chamber? This vacuum chamber prevents the whole setup from the external forces. So theta is equal to 50 degrees when the experiment did from 44 volts to 68 volts. At theta is equal to 50 degrees, a maximum peak was appeared. So there the interference of the electrons was taken place in the maximum number. So this interference causes to the more amount of the photocurrent. So if you want to find out the wavelength, so from 44 volts to 68 ohms, the photoelectric wavelength will change. Now we will see what is the wavelength appeared in this case. So we know that wavelength lambda is equal to h by p, or we know that this one is 1.227 by under root v. Experiment did from 44 volts to 68 ohms. Suppose if v is equal to 54. So 1.227 by under root 54, they got 0.167 nanometers. This value gives a great agreement between the theoretical values to the experimental values. So like this, the de Broglie's hypothesis of dual nature was proved. And more recently in 1989, the same experiment not the same experiment, an interference pattern experiment was did by different scientific group to prove the dual nature of the matter. In 1994, they did the experiment with the double slit interference or single slit interference also. So the hypothesis, the proof of the hypothesis by Mr. de Broglie, a great scientist, led to another branch of the science called quantum mechanics, and not only lead to the quantum mechanics and proof of the many agreements or disagreements did by the many other scientists. So in this lesson, we have concluded what is the wave nature of matter, what is the particle nature of the matter, what is the link with the particle to the wave with respect to the de Broglie's wave equations, next the experiments which are proved to do this, next the photoelectric effect in spite of particle nature and wave nature, and Einstein's hypothesis about the wave nature of the photoelectric effect. So with this part, we are concluding this lesson.